Yo, what's good? Welcome back to the Heart Zone. I'm the host, McGarren Hart. Thank you guys for tuning in. And today I have for you how the Philadelphia Eagles have become a super team and possibly the next dynasty in the NFL. So to start off with this story, you basically have to start with the prelude in 2010 when the Philadelphia Eagles first promoted Howie Roseman to general manager. In his first four drafts, Howie Roseman would draft six players who will have a huge impact on the future of the Philadelphia Eagles. So it started off in 2010 when he drafted his first ever draft pick. He drafted defensive end Brandon Graham. Brandon Graham would be a player who's still playing for the Eagles to this day, the longest tenured member on the team, and it just happens to be that they go hand in hand of when he became general manager and Brandon Graham's been playing for them. So in the next draft, they didn't draft too well in the first few rounds. In the sixth round, though, they would come across a player who would change the fortune of their future, and these players come in handy later because they actually set the foundation for how this will be set up. So they chose a player in Jason Kelsey, who would be the center, the linchpin for the Philadelphia Eagles for a very long time. Fast forward again, 2012. In the first round, they've been building the trenches. Now they go again. In the first round, they draft Fletcher Cox, a defensive tackle who will be the linchpin of their defensive line, as well as in the third round drafting Nick Foles, who has a lot of dominoes, and he is huge. Not just the Super Bowl he won for the Eagles, but he is a huge factor in how this team is what it is to this day. So Nick Foles in the third round was a huge pick for them. And then lastly, in 2013, they drafted Lane Johnson in the first round, as well as Zach Ertz in the second round. And this would be the start of a slow downfall of drafts after this year when Chip Kelly does enter the building in 2013. So that was the prelude. These are the players. You stay tuned. They will set the tone of how this end up becoming a super team because they are the foundation. So 2014. Now, Chip Kelly has been the coach of them. They're kind of transitioning. They had Michael Vick as their quarterback before, after he, went to jail and everything happened with the Falcons. So he was their quarterback for a few years with LaShawn McCoy. Andy Reid was there. Then after 2012, Chip Kelly came in 2013, and they're kind of transitioning to Nick Foles, and he played a pretty good year wherein he was the starting quarterback, where he had 27 touchdowns and 2 interceptions, one of the greatest touchdowns to interception ratios ever for a quarterback. So Nick Foles had an amazing year. Like I said, it will come in handy. So 2014, they draft terribly. Chip Kelly is now having a huge role in their drafts, in their player personnel, in their trades. They're going and trading for guys like Kiko Alonso, bringing in DeMarco Murray, LaShawn McCoy. Like they're making a lot of changes from what they've been building as a team. So you have a few mishaps here. 2014, they spend their first round pick on Marcus Smith. They don't really get any notable players from 2014. Fast forward to 2015. Luckily, they were able to trade Nick Foles for Sam Bradford. You may be like, is that really a great trade? Hold on, because this will come, like the dominoes I said for Nick Foles, they will come into hand. So they traded Nick Foles for Sam Bradford. The reason why this is huge is because Sam Bradford would obviously become their quarterback, but in the future he does bring them assets. So they trade Nick Foles for Sam Bradford to be their starting quarterback. Then they draft Nelson Aguilar in the first round, and they don't really have any other notable picks besides that. Nelson Aguilar was not a great receiver. He still plays to this day, so obviously he's not terrible, but he's not what they were looking for. This wasn't a crazy great wide receiver draft, so them getting Nelson Aguilar when they really needed a receiver wasn't such a terrible pick. And then basically the season didn't go as they wanted to. Sam Bradford is not having a crazy year. Chip Kelly's fired, basically. Is gone. Now it's back time for Howie Roseman to get into gear. And if you've been looking at the trends, the Philadelphia Eagles here have been investing in the trenches, pretty much taking premium positions as much as they can in the first three rounds. Almost all their picks are premium positions. Those premium positions are going to be quarterbacks, offensive line, defensive line, wide receivers, and cornerbacks. 2016, Howie Roseman's back in the chair. Sam Bradford didn't have a great year. Now they want to kind of find their next quarterback. Now they decide, hey, we're going to trade our 2017 first round pick as well as our 2016 first round pick, and we're going to trade up and get our quarterback of the future and Carson Wentz. So they draft Carson Wentz with their first round pick, and immediately it looks pretty good. Carson Wentz plays good in training camp, and now they're like, we can move Sam Bradford. Like I said, this Nick Foles situation will come back. They traded Nick Foles for Sam Bradford. Sam Bradford was then traded for a first round pick to the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings were desperate because they just lost their young star quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater, so they kind of needed a replacement for him, and boom, you have Sam Bradford will take the place. The Eagles get a first round pick after they lost their 2017 first round pick, trading up for Carson Wentz. So now they replenished their first round pick, basically all coming back from Nick Foles. But let's keep it going. They also end up drafting a great guard in Isaac Seumalo in the third round that year. So keep it going. They have a decent year. Carson Wentz really doesn't have weapons. Nelson Aguilar is not really the weapon they want him to be. They don't really have anybody behind him who can really do anything crazy. So 2017, fast forward, they have the Vikings first round pick. They don't have their own first round pick. They invest in the trenches again. Nothing crazy. Derek Barnett, Sidney Jones, not great drafts. But at least they had a first round pick where they could keep trying to invest in the trenches. If you see the emphasis, there's an emphasis on getting the trenches invested in, making sure they're set up for a long time. You still have your stalwarts on the team and Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Lane Johnson, and Zach Ertz. And Jason Kelsey as well. You don't have to worry about those positions. So you're pretty much trying to fill up the other positions around them. So 2017, the Philadelphia Eagles have an amazing year. They bring in Alshon Jeffrey. Howie Roseman makes moves for this team to actually contend. Were they a crazy loaded team? No. But were they a contending team? Absolutely. Carson Wentz had an MVP level year before Carson Wentz got hurt. And this is where a lot of things changed for the Philadelphia Eagles, because Carson Wentz looked like the quarterback of the future. But after this injury, there were a lot of question marks about where they would end up going. Nick Foles ended up coming in for them, had a great playoff run, had a great end of the season run, and he ended up winning the Super Bowl as well as Super Bowl MVP for the Philadelphia Eagles. So now going to the 2018 offseason, they had question marks. Is Nick Foles going to be the quarterback? Are we going to bring back Carson Wentz? How is he going to respond? Well, they decided to bring back Carson Wentz. He was in MVP race. He was a young quarterback. That was the right decision for the Philadelphia Eagles to make at that time. So they go into 2018. They trade out of the first round. Their first round pick that they actually traded ended up being Lamar Jackson, but they wanted to acquire an extra second round pick for the next year, which didn't turn out too well. The 2018 season wasn't great for them. Carson Wentz didn't bounce back like they expected him to, coming off a huge ACL tear, and they basically were about to rebound again. They wanted to see, hey, let's try to help out Carson Wentz as much as we can. Try to build around him and go from there. So, bad season in 2018. They have their first round pick in 2019. They try to invest in the trenches again. Andre Dillard. They take a receiver to try to help out Carson Wentz and J.J. Whiteside. He was not good at all. As well as Miles Sanders. They took to have a running back for him. Also in 2018, they had a huge pick and taking Jordan Mailata. Like I said, when they took these 4 to 6 players earlier, these players set the foundation, but now they're starting to get to 7, 8, 9, 10 years in the league. So now you have to start looking at, hey, who can I have come behind them and stay ready for them, stay ready to be able to replace them. I have these positions filled, but we'll eventually have to have replacements. So he kept it going. He invested in the premium positions again. Pretty much, this is the end of the mid-era, pretty much, where they didn't do much. They had a lot of lessons they had to learn. And a lot of lessons were learned here. And then 2020 came. The biggest lesson of them all for the Eagles GM as well as the Eagles. With their first round pick in 2020, they selected Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. And I think this is the last huge mistake that Howie Roseman made as a GM. He learned from a huge mistake he made, and now it's been smooth sailing since. Second round of that draft, Carson Wentz still hasn't proved himself. So they say, hey, quarterbacks are pretty valuable. I've gotten a lot of valuable assets for pretty much every quarterback I've taken. So what can I do? I can take another quarterback. Maybe he pans out, maybe he doesn't. Jalen Hurts is coming off good seasons at Alabama and Oklahoma. He takes Jalen Hurts to back up Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz doesn't pan out, go to Jalen Hurts. And if Carson Wentz does pan out, you have a very valuable backup. So that was their game plan. Carson Wentz had a very down year again. Jalen Hurts came in at the end of the year, had a decent game, and the Eagles pretty much knew what they wanted to do for the next offseason. Howie Roseman said it's time to trade Carson Wentz. He traded him to the Indianapolis Colts, where it ended up being for a third and first round pick, and Jalen Hurts will now be the starter of the Philadelphia Eagles. And the first thing Howie Roseman did here was not draft a receiver like Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. He decided I will go with the sure thing, the Heisman winner, Devontae Smith, to come be my wide receiver one for Jalen Hurts. So he invested in the trenches many, many years. Jordan Mailata, Isaac Seumalo, Lane Johnson, etc., etc. They already had players like Jason Peters, and then he drafted Jason Kelsey as well, who's still there. And then defense, you still have Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham holding down their respective positions in the trenches, and very important. So 2021, he gets Devontae Smith, as well as investing in the trenches again in Landon Dickerson. Landon Dickerson doesn't have to play right away because they've invested so much in the trenches, where he can learn from the vets and eventually become a great player for them. As well as in round 3, invested in the trenches again in Milton Williams, defensive tackle. Fletcher Cox is starting to get older. Maybe you're looking at the next plan for what's after Fletcher Cox, but he's been holding it down for such a long time. So you got a lot of lee room. So 2021, great draft for them. The Eagles have a very decent season, nothing crazy. A lot of young players, they're starting to develop. So you're like, maybe this team has life. Let's try to invest some more. Boom, 2022 comes. They end up trading a first-round pick for A.J. Brown. This was huge because they had an extra pick from Carson Wentz. And that was all ties back to also having Nick Foles and trading him for Sam Bradford and having the extra draft capital where I could trade up to get Carson Wentz and still be able to get a first-round pick back for trading Sam Bradford. So 2022, they came and they needed to invest in the trenches again. Just kidding. They didn't need to invest in the trenches at all, but Howie Roseman has set a very big emphasis on making sure the trenches are set. Fletcher Cox is still getting older. They want a better defensive tackle rotation. He's still going to be playing, but they want somebody big in there who's going to kind of help the run game a little bit. So, first round pick, Jordan Davis. Second round pick, invested in trenches again. On the offensive side, Cam Jurgens. And then also take a linebacker who will have a huge role in the Kobe Dean. These players, again, not needs for them, but because you invested so early on in the trenches, you have these premium picks where you can just have these guys learn from your vets who aren't ready to go out the league yet, but when they are ready to go out the league, you already have established starters ready to step in instead of trying to develop rookies. So that was huge for them. This year led to a Super Bowl appearance. The trenches were built. They had a lot of great assets. Miles Sanders to DeAndre Swift. Like they had running backs. They had receivers and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. Great O-line. They traded for Darius Slay in 2020, which was huge for them. They were ready to start building. And that's what changed things. So the trenches are built first. He built around the trenches. Now he has his receivers, the quarterback on a rookie contract, DBs. They make a Super Bowl, they lose the Super Bowl. But guess what? Because they had an extra pick in 2022, they traded this extra pick to the New Orleans Saints to basically be able to get another pick in a future draft as well as extra draft assets. Well, this was huge for them because in the next year, they will have a chance at getting Jalen Carter because the Saints were bad. And this, mind you, this is them coming off a Super Bowl, but they have a chance to draft the best player in the draft. He was widely regarded as the best player in the draft. He failed to pick 10 because of off the field issues, but he would have failed to pick 10. But the Eagles wanted to make sure nobody traded up to pick 9 to be able to acquire him. So they traded up to pick 9 to get the best player in the draft to add to their already built trenches in Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, and now you have Jalen Carter. Again, they eventually invested in the trenches. You got Brandon Graham, who's been holding it down. They brought in Hassan Reddick via trade, but now they have somebody they can bring in who's raw, who can learn from their other edges. He doesn't have to play right away in Nolan Smith. So the trenches, again, are invested in. In the third round, Tyler Steen, offensive guard. It's not a need for them, but it's somebody who can develop, and eventually when the guys who are playing now are out the league, they can step right in and fill those spots. So another great draft for them. The Philadelphia Eagles are expected to be in the Super Bowl again. They have a couple injuries that hold them back, but they kind of have all the promise going considered. They need a dominant run game. They have a dominant O-line. DeAndre Swift and Miles Sanders are good running backs. They aren't the running backs to kind of change it for you. They're not Saquon Barkley, pretty much. And that was a huge addition in 2024. Jason Kelce has finally retired. Fletcher Cox has retired. You lost 2 of your huge pieces who have set the tone for the Philadelphia Eagles. But because you drafted guys like Cam Jurgens in the second round and Landon Dickerson in the second round before they needed to be drafted, and because you drafted guys like Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis in the first round before you needed to draft the defensive tackle, you have these guys to just fill in and just step in and play right away and be star players already. So they were pretty much already set there at those positions where they didn't need to draft that. Now you go out, you get the running back, the best running back of this generation, who has size, power, speed, catching, everything you want in a running back. You get him, you put him behind this great O-line that you've been building. So you keep going. You got the receivers now. You have the running back now. You have your quarterback who you drafted. You have the offensive line and defensive line that you drafted. Now you look, hey, I might need a linebacker, non-premium position. And then I haven't spent many picks on my cornerbacks. I traded for Darius Slay. I signed James Bradbury, but I haven't picked a lot of cornerbacks. So what is their trend now? They say, hey, let's go get some cornerbacks. 2024, coming off a very disappointing season in 2023, they draft in the first round Quinyon Mitchell, and in the second round, they draft somebody who failed in Cooper DeJean. Premium positions, again, drafted in the first few rounds, and these players will have huge roles in filling in the holes on the Eagles, where they had for a long time playing players like Maddox. Bradbury kind of fell out. He played good at first, but he fell off a little bit. But they were playing pretty much replacement level players, and now they have 2 young dogs who can pretty much hold these positions down, where, like I said, they won't have to worry about these positions for a long time. So that is pretty much how they built this team. The way you want to do it, if you want to build a super team, you have to first keep investing in the trenches to make sure you establish the trenches and work your way out from there. You need your quarterback, obviously. You're going to need a receiver for that quarterback. You're going to need the defensive line. Not the defensive line. The defensive secondary to cover up when the defensive line doesn't get there. So it's a lot of pieces, but you can see they invested in the trenches, and then they went out from there, and that's how the Philadelphia Eagles built a super team. It all started with having the trenches built for over 10 years, pretty much, by having established veterans who've been there and already having their replacement level players behind them ready to learn and ready to go as soon as they're ready to get out. So great job to the Philadelphia Eagles. I hope you guys enjoyed this video with me explaining how the Philadelphia Eagles have built a super team. And thank you guys for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. I'm Garen Hart, and I'm out.